Hey everyone, today we're diving into another terrifying case. Please support my channel by hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notifications. In one of the brightest and most bustling cities, a tragedy took place that shocked everyone. Ayajan Yadilova, a young and ambitious woman with dreams of a bright future, became the victim of a horrific crime. This incident not only took her life but also exposed serious societal issues like violence and negligence within law enforcement. Ayajan's family and loved ones were devastated, and their pain was deepened by the fact that the police ignored their desperate pleas for help. During this challenging time, they felt like they were losing not just a daughter and sister, but also their hope for justice. Friends who remembered her kindness and warm personality were stunned by the criminal's cruelty, who continued to post provocative updates on social media even while behind bars. But let's start from the beginning. Ayajan's story soon became a symbol of the fight for justice, reminding everyone of the value of life and the importance of protecting women. This tragedy touched many hearts and made people think about how to prevent such cases in the future. In Almaty, a city where life usually moved along peacefully, March 19, 2021, became a day of unease. The remains found scattered in different parts of the city shocked residents and left a deep scar in many hearts. Shortly after these horrifying discoveries, the family of 19-year-old Ayajan Yadilova faced a brutal reality. They had to go through a difficult DNA test process to confirm that the remains belonged to their missing relative. Behind every smile was a lurking shadow ready to break free, and now the entire city found itself in the grip of an invisible manipulator. Before the world knew of Ayajan's tragic fate, on March 18th, she was full of hope and excitement. That day, she uploaded a new video on TikTok, dancing and laughing, radiating positivity and joy. On screen, she looked genuinely happy, and her followers could feel her energy. Ayajan was always eager to share moments from her life and creativity with her audience, and at that time, her dreams of a future filled with design and success seemed entirely within reach. However, there was another less visible side to Ayajan's life. Secret conversations and promising talks brought a stranger into her world, whose true nature remained hidden. His intentions had nothing in common with her dreams, and while she eagerly awaited the chance to launch her brand, shadows were closing in around her. That evening, as her joyful plans began to crumble, Ayajan had no idea that fate had a dark turn in store for her. Ayajan was in her 4th year at the Academy of Design and Fashion, where every day brought new knowledge and inspiration. She was one of the most dedicated students, never missing a class without a good reason. Even on a day when many of her classmates might have taken a break, she remained committed to her studies. That morning, full of enthusiasm, she went to class, dreaming of her future in the world of fashion. After her classes, Ayajan worked at a nail salon as a manicurist. This job not only provided her with an income, but also gave her a chance to connect with different people, helping her develop both personal and professional skills. Her love for sewing started back in her childhood when she first made a dress for her doll or crafted a small souvenir for her mom. Over time, this passion only grew stronger, and now Ayajan was determined to pursue a future in fashion. However, just days before she disappeared, a quiet wave of changes swept through the city, leaving a sense of unease in every corner. One question lingered. Who would be the next victim in the dark game started by this invisible manipulator? On the night of March 20th, 2021, Almaty was gripped by fear as the search for 19-year-old Ayajan Yadilova began. Friends and family, noticing her sudden disappearance, immediately raised the alarm. Ayajan, known for her hard work and sense of responsibility, never neglected her commitments. On the morning of March 19th, as she headed home from her job at the nail salon, she felt satisfied. Her day had gone well, and she'd made new connections. But something went terribly wrong that evening. The dormitory where Ayajan lived, not far from the Academy of Design and Fashion, was usually filled with friendly chatter and laughter. But on that night, as the doors locked at 11 p.m., Ayajan wasn't there. Moral Bakirov, the dorm supervisor, later admitted that he'd never seen Ayajan stay out late or miss a night. When her friends began to worry, they approached Moral, and together they decided to contact the police. However, the response they received was cold. "Wait it out. She'll come back when she's done having fun." As the hours passed with no sign of her, Ayajan's relatives from Taldykorgan began losing hope. Even her boyfriend had no idea where she might be. This pushed her family to reach out to the police once again, urging them to start a search. Ayajan's older sister, who lived in Almaty, tried to file a missing persons report but was met with indifference. The police told her they were all busy with protests and advised her to wait. Frustrated but determined, the family decided to try again, but still, the authorities showed little interest. Realizing they wouldn't get much help, they turned to local volunteers for assistance. Flyers with Ayajan's picture were posted all over Almaty. Volunteers, full of determination, organized search efforts, hoping to find Ayajan safe and sound. Looking back at the events leading up to her disappearance, it's important to note that Ayajan eagerly enrolled in the Academy of Design and Fashion, leaving her hometown of Taldykorgan filled with hope and ambition. Alongside her studies, she actively sewed custom-made clothing and developed her online store, where she launched her brand, Ayalan. This business brought her financial independence and a sense of fulfillment from the creative process. Recently, her shop had been doing exceptionally well, with a growing number of orders that filled her with joy and inspiration. To fulfill her dream of expanding into the Turkish market, Ayajan signed up for Turkish language courses. Despite the challenges, she showed persistence, and her teachers noted her dedication and eagerness to learn. Their belief in her potential only fueled her determination. There was a light of resolve in her eyes, and every step she took brought her closer to her goals. Her shifts at the nail salon where she worked part-time usually ended around 9 p.m. Ayajan always made sure to leave her workstation spotless, believing it added a welcoming touch for clients. As she locked the doors, she felt hopeful, confident that her hard work was paying off. But fate had an unexpected twist in store for her. By March 21st, the search for Ayajan Yadilova had intensified, and the police finally got involved, forming a special investigation team to handle this complex case. On that day, the tireless efforts of the volunteers who had been working around the clock finally paid off. They obtained a crucial lead. They found the taxi driver who had picked up Ayajan and a young man on March 19th in the Nurkent neighborhood. The volunteers immediately passed this information to the police, who quickly obtained footage from security cameras. The video clearly showed Ayajan entering the elevator of a high-rise building with an unidentified man. This discovery marked a turning point in the investigation, sparking hope that there was still a chance to save her. It took investigators only a few minutes to identify the young man and locate his address. On the evening of March 21st at around 10 p.m., police officers arrived at the residence of 28-year-old Rakhman Berdid Taribekov. According to reports, he was at home but refused to open the door, further raising the officers' suspicions. After a brief discussion, they decided to break in. When they forced their way inside, they were met with a horrifying scene. Blood stains everywhere and a dismembered body lying on the floor. Even the most seasoned detectives, accustomed to such grim discoveries, were shaken by what they found. The apartment's owner wasn't found right away. He had hidden himself carefully, hoping to avoid law enforcement. However, once they finally tracked him down, he attempted to take his own life. Fortunately, first responders arrived in time to administer first aid before the paramedics got there. He was rushed into emergency surgery, and while doctors worked to save his life, police began collecting evidence and piecing together the full story of what happened. The criminal would finally have to face justice for his horrific actions. After spending several days in the hospital, and once his condition had stabilized, Taribekov was transferred to a detention center. This move was crucial not only for his safety, but also to ensure that the investigation could proceed without delay. Public interest in the case was growing rapidly, and it was clear it would attract widespread attention. While the suspect was still in the hospital, his rented apartment was sealed off and a thorough forensic investigation took place, involving the city's top crime scene investigators and experts. What they uncovered inside shocked even the most hardened detectives to their core. At first glance, it was hard to believe that someone who appeared so ordinary could have committed such unspeakable acts. The apartment contained a human scalp, skin, extracted teeth and nails, all meticulously placed in separate plastic bags, almost as if they were harmless trinkets. It felt like something straight out of a horror movie, and even the most experienced officers understood that this was not just a crime, but a chilling display of pure madness. Additionally, investigators found dismembered body parts and a skull in the apartment. As the medical examiners later confirmed, the victim's head had been boiled in water for an extended period, leaving nothing but the skull behind. The entire scene was profoundly disturbing, and even the most seasoned law enforcement officers struggled to keep their composure in the face of such horror. As they gathered evidence and searched for more answers in Aya Jan's case, law enforcement found themselves confronted with a true nightmare. In the days following her disappearance, other parts of her body were discovered scattered around the city, tossed in dumpsters and abandoned basements. These horrifying discoveries painted a grim and sinister picture that investigators tried desperately to piece together. The family's last hope of identifying the remains through DNA testing was shattered when they began to understand the sheer magnitude of the tragedy. Ayajan Yadilova went missing on March 19th, and shortly afterward, her family received the devastating confirmation. The remains found across the city did in fact belong to their daughter. During questioning, the suspect, who was found guilty, recounted the events of the night between March 19th and 20, when he and Ayajan had an argument. According to him, at around 11 p.m., he lost control and killed her. Realizing he could be caught, he decided to dispose of her body by dismembering it. That same night, he took several parts out of his apartment and left them scattered across the city, as if trying to completely erase any trace of his crime. When investigators asked about any possible connection between him and the victim, he firmly denied having any. But this claim still needed to be verified, and Ayajan's family was left bewildered. Why would he go to the extent of pulling out her teeth, removing her skin, and cutting her nails if he was simply trying to cover up his crime? Ayajan's family began to suspect that she might not have been his first victim. As the investigation progressed, it was discovered that Tarybekov had previously studied at a medical academy to become a pharmacist, but was expelled for poor performance. This information only deepened investigators' suspicions that the body parts might have been used for some sort of medical or commercial purpose. Forensic experts began digging into his social media conversations and checking all the women he had interacted with. Fortunately, none of them were harmed, but the investigation continued to delve deeper into his life. During the investigation, a chat between Tarybekov and Ayajan on a dating site was uncovered. When this information leaked online, many started speculating about the possibility that Ayajan might have entered into a relationship with him for financial reasons. These rumors sparked a wave of discussions, with countless people sharing their theories about what might have happened. Attention was also drawn to the footage showing Ayajan entering the elevator with the young man. However, her friends and acquaintances were quick to defend her, insisting that she was modest and always respected boundaries in her interactions with men. Ayajan's family knew how much effort she had put into building her online store and clothing brand. They were convinced that Tarybekov had lured her to his apartment under the pretense of business, possibly to take measurements or place an order. They simply couldn't believe that such a ruthless person could have set such a trap. Ayajan's roommate in the dorm, who was someone she confided in about her deepest thoughts, recalled some unsettling events before her disappearance. Ayajan had recently mentioned that a man had shown interest in her brand and wanted to buy her entire collection. While this news initially excited her, it also made her a bit wary, since Ayajan was always cautious around strangers. Investigators concluded that Tarebekov might have orchestrated this meeting to lure her into a trap under the guise of a business opportunity. At the center of it all was a man named Rakhman Berdid Tarebekov, who, according to the investigation, had connected with Ayajan Yadilova through a popular social media platform. Using the excuse that he needed clothing from her brand, he convinced her to come to his place where the terrible incident seemingly took place. Ayajan's family went through unimaginable pain as they waited for her body to be released for burial. Those days were filled with unbearable uncertainty and fear. Her loved ones desperately sought any information about what had happened to their daughter, experiencing an overwhelming sense of grief. It wasn't until April 16th, 2021, almost a month later, that her body was finally handed over for the funeral. Ayajan was laid to rest in her hometown of Taldykorgan, where friends, family, and acquaintances gathered to pay their final respects and say goodbye. The atmosphere was thick with sorrow and loss, as people shared memories of her kindness and vibrant spirit. The investigation faced numerous rumors and gossip that tarnished Yadilova's reputation. Messages exchanged between her and Tarebekov, obtained by investigators, proved that accusations of her being promiscuous were completely baseless. This only fueled the heated discussions in the community, where her friends and acquaintances refused to believe that Tarebekov was capable of such brutality. Teachers and classmates of Tarebekov described him as a quiet and modest young man who would never commit a crime, claiming he was either framed or caught up in some misunderstanding. Meanwhile, law enforcement conducted countless forensic examinations to uncover the truth and gather all the evidence. The family's attorney, Kadir Janalim Januli, mentioned in one of his interviews that the case consisted of around 30 volumes with over 30 forensic examinations conducted. This extensive investigation demanded tremendous effort and time from the authorities. Despite this, psychiatric evaluations confirmed that Tarebekov was sane and fully aware of his actions when he committed the crime. At the trial, which marked the final chapter of this horrific case, Ayajan's family demanded the harshest possible punishment for the criminal, along with compensation for emotional damages totaling 26 billion tenge. After carefully reviewing all the details, the court handed down the maximum sentence of 25 years in prison, but they found no grounds for imposing a life sentence. However, the court did partially grant the civil lawsuit, awarding 20 million tenge in compensation, which, though only a small measure, could at least offer some relief to the family during their painful ordeal. Ayajan Yadilova's relatives recalled with horror and anger the fateful day when they first went to the local police station, desperately hoping for help. Their anxiety was genuine and urgent, but to their immense disappointment, law enforcement ignored their repeated pleas to launch an immediate search for the missing young woman. This refusal not only shocked the family, but became an unbearable burden that they couldn't leave behind, amplifying their sense of helplessness and fear. Every hour that Ayajan was in danger turned into a torturous wait for her family, intensifying their worst fears. In one of his emotional interviews, Ayajan's brother, overcome with grief, spoke about the police's inaction, which led to the loss of critical days in the search for his sister. They felt time slipping away, and with every passing minute, a sense of hopelessness grew stronger. The perpetrator, realizing that no one was taking any active steps, continued his gruesome acts without fear or hesitation. He mercilessly disposed of Ayajan's body, unaware that with every minute, her family was losing hope of ever seeing her alive again. A month after the tragedy, the family laid Ayajan to rest with heavy hearts, knowing they would never have a proper goodbye. The closed zinc coffin became a haunting symbol of their fear and loss, and each of them wished they could see her one last time, feel her kindness, and experience the warmth she so generously shared with everyone around her. Their hearts were filled with bitterness and regret, as they now understood they had lost her bright eyes and genuine smile forever. The police, on their part, refused to admit any mistakes, insisting that all necessary measures had been taken promptly and on time. However, the facts told a different story. The delay at the start of the investigation only deepened the family's suffering, raising even more questions and frustration. Ayajan's loved ones couldn't understand how their pain and fear could be so easily dismissed, knowing that time was working against them. This sense of helplessness and despair wasn't felt by the family alone. Ayajan's friends also found themselves overwhelmed with anger and resentment toward a system that was supposed to protect them. When investigators finally began collecting evidence and conducting interviews, they encountered a barrage of rumors tarnishing Ayajan's reputation. These accusations, spread by ill-wishers, turned out to be baseless, adding even more bitterness to her family's suffering. They knew their Ayajan as a kind, compassionate, and bright individual, and couldn't believe that anyone could be capable of such cruelty toward her. Each new fact revealed only intensified their emotional pain, making them feel even more isolated and alone in their grief. The crime against Ayajan Yadilova left an indelible mark, not just on her family and friends, but on the entire community, becoming a tragedy that stirred the hearts of many. Ayajan was a young, ambitious, and talented woman who aspired to develop her own brand and build a bright future full of hopes and dreams. She had plans that extended beyond her career, envisioning a personal life filled with happiness and achievements. But her life was cut short in the most tragic way, exposing deep-rooted systemic issues such as the negligence of law enforcement and the pervasive violence in society, demanding urgent attention and change. Ayajan's family, in the midst of unbearable loss, painfully recognized that the police's inaction had cost them precious time. Her friends, remembering her with sorrow, couldn't help but notice how disturbingly cynical Tarabekov's social media page appeared. Even while in custody, he continued posting provocative messages. One of his statuses, "Smile at life, and it will surely smile back at you," was especially brazen given the crime he had committed. How could someone speak about the joy of life after taking it away from another person? These words only deepened the bitterness and sense of helplessness felt by everyone who knew Ayajan and remembered her kindness, joyfulness, and sincerity. Ayajan's brother, with deep sorrow in his heart, expressed his hope for justice in one of his emotional interviews. "I believe in the law of karma," he said with genuine conviction, confident that sooner or later everyone who commits evil will have to face the consequences of their actions. His words carried powerful emotion as he declared that, despite all the suffering, justice would eventually prevail. Even in the darkest moments of their lives, a spark of hope still burned, despite the darkness surrounding them. The criminal's motive remained unknown, but it was clear that what he did brought him some kind of twisted satisfaction. The trial of Tarabekov became a symbol of the fight for justice, drawing public attention and sparking widespread outrage. But for Ayajan's family, it didn't change the fact that their beloved daughter and sister had been brutally taken from them. The case raised many questions about moral responsibility and the importance of being vigilant and aware of those around us, as such a tragedy could happen to anyone. The crime against Ayajan was a grim reminder that every life is precious, and that we must do everything we can to prevent similar cases in the future. Let her story be a call to action, prompting stronger efforts to prevent violence and protect women's rights in society, urging all of us to reflect on how we can make the world a safer and more just place to live. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There are a lot of shocking stories coming up.